So now we want to take a look at the Cisco Spectrum Expert tool and how it can be used to find sources of interference. I think this is my favorite section of this course. So let's first talk a little bit about the Cisco Spectrum Expert tool itself. Now, Cisco recommends using this tool for doing a Layer 1 sweep. And what do we mean by a Layer 1 sweep? That's basically a scan of the RF environment. And so looking for what can we hear that's operating in those bands. And you can see here that the Cisco does the entire 2.4 and then the 4.9 to 5.9 frequency bands. Now, the equipment itself, it consists of a sensor card, and that card is in the old PCM-CIA card bus format. And unless you have a really old laptop, your laptop or tablet probably doesn't support that format. And what I had to do is I had to get an adapter that I could plug this card bus into that would convert it to a mini PCM-CIA card. And I did have a laptop that's about 4 years old that still supports the mini PCM-CIA card format. So it's a bit of a problem trying to find something that will actually support the old card bus format. Now, on the card itself, in the form of an ASIC, is the actual engine that's analyzing all the spectrum data. If you're not familiar with an ASIC is simply a silicon chip that has been purposely built for a specific application. In other words, the Cisco Spectrum Analysis Engine is running on a custom silicon chip. In addition to the card that then plugs into your laptop, there's also an antenna. Now, the antenna that comes with the card bus is a simple omni antenna, but it's possible, providing you get the antenna with the right connector, to attach a directional antenna. And using a directional antenna is quite nice for helping you find sources of interference a little bit quicker. So in addition to the sensor card and the antenna, there's also the software itself, which you install on your laptop. And this actually, it has a graphical user interface, a GUI, and this is where you'll display information about interfering sources, signal strength, etc. I thought we'd take a quick look at the capabilities of this tool. So we click on Start and select the Cisco Spectrum Expert. Click Yes, we want to use the external antennas. So let's first talk about the various panels that you see being displayed. This is the Active Devices panel, and this will display all the Wi-Fi devices that can be heard by the Cisco Spectrum Expert. It'll include access points as well as interfering devices such as microwave ovens and cordless phones. Below it is the Control panel, and the Control panel will display information that's variable depending on which mode of operation I'm in. And if you bear with me 1 minute, I'll talk about the different modes of operation. Down here you see the spectrum bar, and this tells me what spectrum I'm currently monitoring as well as which antenna I'm using. If I come up here, I can uncheck these if I don't want to have them being displayed. That includes the active devices and the control panels that I can turn off. One of the nice things about the active devices and control panel is I can actually click here and here these pins, and rather than stopping them, they stay here should I wish then to view them again. So that's really nice. And of course, by putting them in as a pin on the side, it makes this panel in the middle much larger. So these 5 tabs at the top are what we call the mode of operation. And you can see there's 2 spectrum modes, a device mode, a channel summary, and a device finder. So let's talk about those. The spectrum modes, and I have two, is where I would display my charts and plots. And depending on how I'm using the tool, I would choose different plots and charts. And so if you come here and click on the Spectrum tab, you can see Add Plot and Add Chart. And so, for instance, let's say I want to look at the power in the band against the frequency. I can click on that, and you can see along the x-axis I have the frequency along the 2.4 gigahertz band, and on the y-axis I have the power level. I can display another chart. Let's say I also want to add the power versus time, so I can see how power is changing over time. And again, you can see the power, and now I have time on the x-axis. I can add up to 4 charts, and I can also pause selected items. So if I want to just stop that and take a closer look at it, I can actually freeze it, so then I can perhaps analyze it a little bit better. So again, we have 2 of those. So let's say I was doing a site plan and I was looking for sources of interference, and I was looking in both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz band. I might display 2.4 on one spectrum tab and 5 gigahertz on the second spectrum tab. In the Devices tab, so now I can see the devices that the Cisco Spectrum Expert has found, and I can see more details about them. And so if I click on one of these, right click on one of these, I can say, what is this device? And here you can see the Cisco Spectrum Expert has determined that it is an access point, and if I click on Advanced, it'll tell me more information about it, including its MAC address, its data rates, etc. Click OK. And this is very useful, not only for finding valid access points, rogue access points, and other interfering devices. If I go to the channel summary, now you can see right across the spectrum band that I'm currently monitoring, and you can see I just have activity in the top channels, and the rest of the spectrum is relatively free. And so if I was doing a spectrum plan, this is telling me what channels might be the best one to deploy the access point in that location where I currently have the Cisco Spectrum Expert. Let's take a look at this last tab. So the device finder you can think about as an RF sniffer. I can select a device and then I can walk around, and as I walk around, that signal strength will get weaker or stronger, and as I move around, I want it to get stronger so I can find the source of interference, and then I can make a decision as to what I do with that source of interference. So it's like an RF sniffer to help me go and find different equipment that's operating in that band. So now you've had a chance to look at the Cisco Spectrum Expert tool itself. Let's now focus in on trying to make sure we understand what the spectrum plots are. Now there are 2 plots which people can easily get confused, and it's very important to distinguish between the 2. The one on the top here is the real-time FFT plot, and the one on the bottom is the power versus frequency. And so when you look at these plots, you look at them and you go, wow, along the y-axis is my power level, the signal strength, and along the x-axis is the frequency band. So they look very similar. The major difference between them is that the real-time FFT plot is actually calculated within the card bus sensor itself, whereas the power versus frequency is actually calculated as part of the tool's software that's running on your laptop. So you might ask, well, why does that make a difference? Well, when you're running on the actual sensor card itself, on the ASIC, it's running the analysis much faster, and so is able to process very large quantities of information. However, the parameters of that analysis are hard-coded into the ASIC itself. And so if you do it on the computer, it means you can't process as much data. However, you actually can change the parameters of the analysis that you want to do. So having said that, I want to show you how the real-time FFT works, so then we can talk about what is different when you look at the power versus frequency plot. So the way the Cisco Spectrum Expert sensor card, the physical card, the ASIC itself works, is it will take a 20 megahertz channel and break it into 128 smaller sub-channels, each of which is 156.25 kilohertz wide, and it will sample that smaller sub-channel for 6 microseconds, meaning that in a 20 megahertz channel you will have 128 samples that have been collected. Now it stays on that 20 megahertz channel for 30 milliseconds, doing a sample every 6 microseconds, which means that in 30 milliseconds in that 20 megahertz channel, the sensor card would have collected 5,000